Well, everyone's been sending me Centro's latest tweet. Oh, I can already see how excited you are. None of us could possibly be. But if you want me to cover it so bad, let's look at it. Well, Centro's tweeted a couple interesting things. This is a tweet talking about 800,000 alleged Switch Pro chips delivered to Nintendo in September. And they also tweeted this, which is kind of cool. So it's in the anime, in the latest episode, Zygarde betrays its trainer and splits into a bunch of cells to protect something. What's cool about this is we saw from the leaks that Pokemon has a plan for Zygarde in Pokemon Horizons. This specific one. This is the Zygarde that's probably going to become Mega Zygarde. Maybe in 6 months or in a year's time. It's this one right here that's a shiny. That is to say, unless Mega Zygarde's been scrapped, because, just the thing we do with Pokemon Z stuff. But it's cool to see some instincts here. So Zygarde prioritizes protection so much, it's anime continuity, so it doesn't have to line up with the games, but that it would do something like that. Okay, this is the one y'all want me to look at. Some random dude called Grok. Grok's summary about Pokemon Gen 10 is pretty good, actually. Freaking Grok? Like that crap? What is Grok? It's AI. Alright, let's just go to y'all's emails. What the A Legendary will be. Hey T-Tar, I know there's a lot of theories on what the A Legendary will be, but everyone is getting lost in the lore and forgetting that the Legendaries already had a theme. The 3 Legendaries are all based on Norse mythology, and I don't think Pokemon would break that, or at least they would rather want to make it fit first. And so my idea comes from the fact that Zygarde is an obvious reference to Asgard. And what would be the counter to that? Ragnarok, the end of the world. That is why Zygarde doesn't do anything all game. He's waiting for the end of the world level threats, like what Necrozma would have been. So yeah, Zygarde's name contains a Norse word in it that means like a realm, which you see a lot in Norse mythology. It's like Garder or something. So it's a combination of Zygote and Garder. So you're right in connecting it to Asgard. It's almost like Zygarde protects the Kalos region like it's Asgard, and it's the walled city. And of course, in mythology, something comes to break the wall at the end of times. That's Ragnarok. So it would be cool if you pretty much take this into the biggest scale. If Kalos is this walled city and Zygarde is protecting its Asgard, then a Ragnarok would be exactly the thing that would threaten the Kalos region, and Zygarde specifically is here to stop that. Honestly, I like where you're going with this idea. I'm down to defend this idea. It gets a little weird though, because the entire game takes place in Lumios. And you would think if it's a region-ending threat, why do they put the game entirely within Lumios? But it could still work out. I mean, now that you've confined it to Lumios, that's like quite specifically an Asgard. It's also the center of the region. It's circular, and in a weird way, it feels like it has that wall around it. So the story of the game would have to be something like there is something very special in Lumios, and there's more meaning to it being in the center of Kalos. And some kind of Pokemon would have to show up around 200 years ago during this game trying to get that. And so it would break the safety of the city, and I suppose succeed in getting it, and that's what would awaken it into this Ragnarok-like Pokemon that we dubbed the A Legendary. And then this is when Zygarde would show up. And maybe the game would show us some lore that a long time ago, Zygarde already fought off this Pokemon. And it's an ongoing rivalry between them. So that's why the logos are like that. Z-A. Because Zygarde never does a thing in its life, it's like its only purpose is specifically to monitor for any signs of this Pokemon returning. It depends which version of the mythology you read, but the general one you'd find is Surtur, being the Ragnarok I'm talking about. That's the dude who comes and breaks the wall and begins the end of the world, pretty much. Well, honestly, that's the most we could discuss with this idea, but I guess there's some other cool things that are worth pointing out, like Asgard itself starts with an A. Not that you could name a legendary off Asgard, but it would be interesting if, remember that Garder ending I was talking about? If this A legendary has that same ending. So you almost look at Zygarde and the A as 2 sides of the same coin. But okay, it does give me one idea to share with y'all, okay? So let's say there is something inside the center of Kalos that this Pokemon reemerges to claim. You could tell a fun story about what the origin to the Kalos region is. In the same way in Paldea, we have some mysterious origin. We think some Atlantis past happened, leads to these ancient people leaving remnants of their existence in the crater. People who had already mapped out all of Paldea and were clearly way more advanced than us, who we don't know anything about, but with them would lie the true history of Paldea, what really came first. Something similar could happen here, specifically targeting the word Asgard. This thing that the A legendary would come to our walled city to reclaim, maybe this was the centerpiece of something that existed a long time ago in Kalos. And back then, we did have an Asgard-like structure. You could compare this mysterious artifact or whatever to something like the Yggdrasil, where back then, in the center of Kalos, there was this giant tree, and people in Pokemon lived in harmony. Let's say 3,000 years ago, maybe further. Maybe, honestly, if you go back to the AZ cutscene war and you're able to turn the camera away from the war, you would see this exact scenery I'm talking about. Maybe there was this giant tree in the center of Kalos, the Yggdrasil equivalent. People in Pokemon lived in harmony, and these people also lived alongside Xerneas and Yveltal, who in, of course, mythology, have a bigger role hanging out near the tree. You got Yveltal as the eagle at the top. You got Xerneas as one of 4 stags. Maybe back then there were many more Pokemon with the ability of life and death. The picture I'm painting here is the opposite of how I was describing Paldea, where they were technologically advanced, but here they were just one with nature, living alongside these godly Pokemon. Not just the eagle at the top, the 4 deers, but everything else you find on the Yggdrasil, like the gossip squirrel that goes up and down the tree, or like the dragon that's at the bottom of the tree, living amongst its roots, eating it, called Nidhogg. You could take all the animals on the Yggdrasil and make them legendary Pokemon that existed back then. All of these animals would be living alongside the Yggdrasil, the tree of life, and because of that, they would all naturally have a dark aura or a fairy aura to them, which is just life energy in general. They're 2 sides of the same coin. But these people would be just living alongside these animals, and that's really just all of them. It's really just the 4 stags, the eagle, Nidhogg, and Ratatoskr. Those are the only animals that are worth making important. And so the idea would be at some point, this Ragnarok Pokemon appeared and ruined all of this. This could happen 3,000 years ago during AZ's time. It could predate it, going thousands of years even before then, or it could happen after AZ's time. This could be like 1,000 years ago that really this happened, which is kind of the same scope we imagine the Legends Arceus timeline. We imagine Legends Arceus was around 150 years ago, but all that Giratina stuff with this old statue and the Celestica people, we imagine that was just like 1,000 years ago. But pretty much, of all the Pokemon and humans that lived alongside the tree, most of them perish, except the eagle at the top and one of the 4 deers. And that's how you get the 2 legendaries that survive to this day, Xerneas and Yveltal, who, if you notice, don't clash with each other. They're not like Kyogre and Groudon, where they're fighting. They almost look passive. They almost look like they're not bothered by the other's existence. Zygarde in the leak says he's fine with Xerneas blessing life and Zygarde taking life. He'll only step in if too much of either is done. But taking all the assumptions aside, it doesn't seem like Xerneas and Yveltal themselves ever fight. So a history like this that I described could be believable, where they're just survivors of the original Yggdrasil. And the seed of that Yggdrasil is what's in the center of Kalos right now. And so in the midst of this game being about redeveloping Lumiose, this is also happening behind the scenes. Maybe someone's conspiring to get the Yggdrasil seed back out to attract the A legendary to Lumiose. Kind of like this Ragnarok Pokemon is sleeping far away from Lumiose, and if it smells it's out again, it'll come like freaking Surtur and start to completely threaten Lumiose. Or maybe the Yggdrasil itself, which is now in the form of a seed, is the A legendary. And 1,000-ish years ago, wherever we're placing this freaking crap that I'm spewing, that it was only a matter of time before these Pokemon and people that lived in harmony by this tree would eventually be threatened by that tree itself. And this is a situation that just ended up destroying itself. And then the seed buries underneath Kalos. And the reason I say this is because if you look at the Legend ZA logo, the A kinda does remind you of a tree. Just what you see at the bottom, the patterns. So maybe that's the real threat of the games. Someone is trying to make the Yggdrasil grow from its seed again. And this is what Zygarde, no matter what, will not allow to happen. And he's gonna be our savior. Okay, I'm done. I won't say another word. Actually, one more thing I could say here, which is the framework I've pictured here allows room for you to introduce new legendaries into this game. So just like how you had Enamorus in Legend ZA, you could introduce at least one new legendary, which is pretty much you make more of the animals around the Yggdrasil still be around and have survived. The two main ones that come to mind are Ratatoskr and Nidhogg. The Gossip Squirrel, which kind of sounds like it would work out to be like a mythical, but the big important one is Nidhogg, the dragon that eats and feeds on the roots of the Yggdrasil. So it sounds like if someone was trying to get the seed back out, that they would accidentally also release Nidhogg into the world, and you would find it hiding somewhere in the post-game, you know, like a Giratina. So while the main legendary of this game is the A legendary / the Yggdrasil, that would be a post-game secret legendary. And then Ratatoskr would be some freaking event crap. Okay, now I'm done.